you have been to church already this morning, and if you have already heard from God, if I don't have anything to say today, it doesn't matter. You've already heard from God, and it's been good to hear from Him today. I want to take a moment to just tell you a little bit about these cards and about why they're important, because they are important. The reason why we have these pledge cards is there's numerous reasons, but one is that we want to give you the opportunity to think about your giving to God. If we don't do that, and if we don't give you this opportunity, then you're liable to just every once in a while take your checkbook out and think, oh, I've got to write a check to the church. And you'll write a check for X amount of money and you'll put it in there and never thinking about the big picture. And I'm not talking about the big picture of the church. I'm talking about the big picture of your income. That this is a way for you to have the opportunity to stop and think about how you are giving to the church. This is a way for you to remember that you should intentionally give. Now, I want to say too about the whole idea of intention. That let's say that just for easy math sake, and that's where I have to be for easy math sake, is you make $50,000 a year and you pledge to give $5,000 in 2011 to the church. Well, let's say in June you lose your job. And let's say you end up only making $30,000 in the year. Now, you intended to give $5,000, but if you could only really give $30,000, I don't think that God is going to hold you to that other $2,000. You see what I'm saying? I had a fellow in my first church that was so against pledging. He was so against giving a pledge. And he said, I work by commission, and I may not make as much money as I did last year. And I was young, and I didn't, and he was an older gentleman, and I didn't have quite the gumption to say this, but I should have said, well, you pay estimated taxes, don't you? I mean, God will take your estimated payments, And you know about what you made last year, and you can subtract a little bit of that and tithe on that, and at the end of the year, if you've made more, then you can give more. So this is your intention. I intend to do this. Now, if God really lays it on your heart that you are supposed to give $5,000 and you lose your job and you have a hard time making that $5,000, but you really believe God wants you to come through with it, follow through with it, then you better. And I think that you'll probably be amazed at how God will come through for you. This is also a way for you to be accountable. There'll be two people that know what you've pledged, and they are not going to tell anybody. They're not going to think any more of you or any less of you, depending on what you put down. And I promise you that. I give you my word on that. But you will get statements about what you've given. And this is a way to hold you accountable to what you said you would do. And we all need that. I mean, we all got that when we were growing up, that we were held accountable for our actions, weren't we? I was held accountable for my actions all the time. And if I said I was going to do something, then I better do it. And there are times that I need people to hold me accountable to that. And this is a way of holding ourselves accountable. And the last thing is that it helps us to be obedient disciples. That when we give these out, we're trying to help you be an obedient disciple. so that you would tithe. Now you may say, well, preacher, I don't want to be like the Pharisees and be all legalistic about the 10%. That was a law thing. And I say, well, 10% is just a guide. I mean, it really is just kind of a guide. It's easy to do the math, and hey, I'm thankful for that. But it's a guide, and what we talked about last week, it's really the floor of our giving. It's not the ceiling. It's not, I've given 10%, I don't have to give any more. No, the 10% is the floor. And sometimes we live in a basement, okay? But we ought to live up closer to the ceiling if we can. Now, I know people have come up to me and say, well, preacher, do I pay, on my gross income or my net income? Before taxes or after taxes? Well, that's between you and God, okay? If you're going to be that persnickety about it, my feeling is just start giving 10% of something, Let's not be so caught up in it. But I will say this, that, when I start, way down the road, when I start receiving Social Security, I'm going to tithe on that. So, you have to make your own decisions, and you have to be right with God yourself. But you just have to make a decision and start. The pledge helps us be obedient disciples. And so I ask the question is, what does your pledge say about your relationship to Jesus? Does it say, I trust you a little, or I trust you a lot? So the real question, and we've been going through this month about stewardship, and I know that next week you're going to be so glad. Say, thank goodness he's not going to talk about money next week. But I had somebody to say last week, and they're not here today, so I can say this, and I won't say their name. But they said, I really appreciated so much how you said that, because I've never heard anybody talk about money the way you talked about it last week, and I appreciated it. So we've been on this journey of trying to be good stewards and being generous. We have seen the promised land that God says that there's a territory out there that He wants us to conquer. The territory around our church, our neighborhood, our city, and even our world. That He wants to spread God's kingdom through us. And He's already doing great things among us and in us. And He wants to give us more territory. He wants to expand our borders. Remember, anybody read the Prayer of Jabez, the book that came out years ago? And it was all the rage. Expand our borders. And God wants to do that. And we were reminded last week that we don't have to be afraid to be generous. We don't have to be afraid that we're going to have to do without our needs. And self-gratification is not really all it's cracked up to be. That being generous is how we were made to be. That God has given us many, many gifts, and He's given those to us so that we can share those with others. So the question before us today is very simple. What is your real treasure? What is your real treasure? What is the thing that your heart dwells upon most? What does your heart dwell upon the most? When we stop to think and actually consider what our true treasure is, that for most of us, it's not the things that we purchased. It's our families. It's our parents, our children, our spouses. For some of you, it's grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews. It's those relationships that we have. And it's the things that's connected to those relationships. You know, I have a pair of cufflinks that were my grandfather's. And I never met my grandfather. Never met either of my grandfathers. But I have those cufflinks of his. I have a coat of an overcoat of my father's that I cherish. Those are the things that are really, really important. The heirlooms that are connected to relationships. The memories that we have. That remind us of great things. When I thought about this was the memory that popped into my head this week. Where I grew up in Wildwood, Georgia, and there's a few people here who actually know where Wildwood is. And but we had Mom still lives there. We had 11 acres, and about 4 to 5 of that we had to mow. And it was on a hill, so it was not very easy to do. And so, we'd spend a lot of time. My father and I both could use a weed eater at the same time and weed eat for about 3 hours each. And maybe finish the weed eating, okay? We did not have a lawn. We had a yard, And it took, if Dad and I could work hard and finish it, we could start on Monday morning, and if we worked hard, we could finish it by Thursday afternoon. The two of us working together.